Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. And this is Bluey. So he's joining me today for today's show. We have the dogs in the studio today. There is no real good reason for that, apart from the fact both Judith and I own dogs and we thought we'd let them meet. But actually it fits in quite nicely with the theme of today. We are talking about what makes us well. Overall, what makes us well? Do you know the answer to that question? And especially if you're female, because we're always told with all of these adverts, be a well woman. Well, what does being a well woman actually look like? That's why we've got Felicia Jones joining us. She is a stress consultant and also talks a lot about nutrition and overall wellness, and she will be helping us unpack that topic, as will Blue and Judith's dog, Ben. Let's go over to the main studio. Welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours, Felicia. It's always great to chat with you.
And it's lovely to be here and particularly to be talking about this topic today. I know we always talk about great topics, but yeah, this one is especially important.
This one is a very important topic because we see so many adverts about being a well woman. What do we need to take this supplement, or we need to go rock climbing, or we need to do all of these different things to be well. And it's kind of, especially as women, there's a lot of pressure that happens there. So why, that's probably the place to start. Why is this topic so important and meaningful to you?
Well, you know that I do a lot of workshops for women and around wellness, and we've talked about unhealth and that sort of thing before, but we've also talked about hidden illness. And lately I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of writing around masks and the hats that we wear and how we don't actually show who we really are. And at the same time as all of this, I've also been reading this amazing book. Can you see that?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's by Eleanor Cleghorn. And I hope we can put this in the show notes. It's absolutely amazing because one of the things that it talks about is how historically women's health was diagnosed, and there's all of this, all these, scientists talking about women's emotions causing physical health. We know that, that doesn't actually relate, but in some ways, we're still having those kind of messages, And one of the things when I was looking at this, I looked at women who died in childbirth. In the UK, a developed country, between 2020 and 2022, almost 300 women died in childbirth.
Oh my gosh.
296 women. And the reason that I bring this up is because we often have this idea of childbirth as being, this beautiful experience of being in this labour ward and having all of these wonderful people around us and then just giving birth naturally without any pain or anything like that. And for some women, that is the experience. That is absolutely amazing. But for some women, it's absolutely traumatic. That's not their experience at all. And when we look at Black and minority ethnic women, we find that they're 2.5 times more likely to have complications in childbirth or die in childbirth. And then, then the other thing is that, looking at women's conditions that are more prevalent, there's a whole host. You've got arthritis, osteoporosis, all of that, bone health, musculoskeletal issues. We see an increase in chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Mental health is higher in women. And then we've got all of the menstrual issues as well. And so it's not that women don't take their health seriously, but I often see women not putting themselves first or thinking, I don't want to make a fuss, that, I'll tend to this person, that person, everybody else first before myself. So for me, this is a really important topic.
Yes, hugely. And actually that leads me on to the phrase of being a well woman, because we are told we have to be, in many ways, the implication is we have to be mother and daughter and friend and sister and worker and leader and all of those things put together in this beautiful kind of package. But what does being well actually mean? From what you're saying, it's actually looking after our own health is a huge part of that.
I often hear that about a complete sense, and I don't think we can ever be, completely healthy, but it also talks about physical, mental, emotional and social well-being. And I think it's important to look at it as this whole holistic viewpoint, it's not only physical. And I think we often think, oh, my leg's not broken, or, you know, I haven't got a headache, I'm well. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I often ask my clients or in workshops, you know, how do you know if you're well, or how do you know if you're unwell? And people really struggle with that because of that whole thing of thinking about it as its physicality. But, you know, really, is it something that's blocking you? Could it be that you're overdoing things, or that you don't have the time that's really stressing you out, and you're not acknowledging that? You know, I often think about when we have a cold, and, you know, if you're getting recurring colds and you're not actually thinking about the root of that.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually thinking, well, last week Jenny had a cold and I knew I shouldn't have gone, but I was just like, I've got to help her, I've got to help her. Or because I haven't got time, I'm not eating well. So really, this whole talking about well-being is coming back, I think, to ourselves and really asking that question, am I well? Am I unwell?
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads me to my next question, because we all have different starting points. It's like physical health as well. We have different immune systems and so on. So how do you support somebody in understanding, I guess, what looks well for them as an individual?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that is just such a big thing, and it is really complex. But so it's starting with that, how do I know if I'm well or if I'm unwell?
Yeah.
I think it's sort of probing into ourselves and really giving ourselves permission to ask those questions, because I think often we don't. I think often we're, as I said, you know, we're running around doing things for other people. And when I'm doing my group work, I see common themes. I see particularly women who are really stressed, that aren't eating well, that don't have time. And this is me as well. But I also see that there's periods where we're not having healthy boundaries, or we're overdoing, we're over caring. And so all of those things come into our own well-being. We have to, I know it sounds awful, but we have to take responsibility for our own health. And really, in my workshops, that's all I'm doing, opening a space for women to explore and to start, you know, taking responsibility for what they can do. It's not everything, but just, you know, what can I actually work on?
Yeah, definitely.
And that really leads into the next question, the sort of the well-being, the general well-being around health, because there's still a huge problem with confusing beauty with health. Beauty is very limiting for obvious reasons, and can be stereotypical, and still produced potentially for a very male gaze. How can we educate, especially young women, about this?
It's the Instagram crowd, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you said that, because last week I was running a wellbeing workshop for women, and I work with women that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, above. And this is not only about young women, and it's not only from a male gaze. I think women can call each other out.
Yes,
women can make each other feel bad about not being, as you said, the Insta image. I think it's just been perpetuated over years and years of this condition. It almost becomes unconscious that this is what's happening. And when I was doing my workshop last week and I was researching it, I saw an ad with Gillian Anderson. And it was for L'Oreal, and it was talk about aging, women and aging. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And really, that's one of the places that it starts. I've seen Viola Davis do one. I know Helen Mirren talks about growing older, and they're beautiful women.
Yes.
You know, I think it starts from this point of view where we are looking at health internally and externally. And one of the reasons that I work with adults is because I think once you start taking care of yourself as an adult, either consciously or unconsciously, you're able to educate in a way your community, because people will be looking at you, you'll be an inspiration. And it could be to your family, to younger members of your family, it could be your friends or relatives, or it could be in the workplace. So I do think, yes, it is important to educate women and younger women, But I think it all starts, and I know this sounds like a little bit woo-woo, but I think it all starts with us.
Yes, I think you're right.
Being the example that we want to, to give to others.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And actually, that's something we're just going to leave you to hold on to for a second, because Felicia will be back with us. We'll be back just after this.
Hey there, I'm Diane Forster, host of I Have Today, where we talk about the art of intentional living. Our show is on the Fresh Takes channel on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific. So if you're ready to be inspired, empowered, and educated and learn how to live the I Have Today way, then tune in. Hope to see you there.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. We're here with Felicia Jones, and we are talking about what makes a well woman, because we hear this term a lot. Mm-hmm. And we've just been talking about stereotypes and the belief that we have to look a certain way or do a certain thing. And it's not just the media. We can actually be guilty of propagating some of this ourselves. And so let's break that down a bit, because health and being well is really complex. As you said earlier, it involves physical health, mental health, emotional health, all of those different things. And for many, sexual health, financial health, all of that is really key. So how do we, A, recognise what is our optimum on all of those things, and B, we are likely to focus on one over the other, often the financial. I've got to work, I've got to do those things. And so everything else then suffers, even though we know we need the others, and we're probably going to perform better if we actually took care of all the others.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've said it before, but I do come back to that World Health Organization quote, because the other part of that is it talks about not merely the absence of infirmity or disease. And I think that often, as I said before, we're looking at things from the external. My leg's not broken, I haven't got a headache, rather than looking at the internal. And I think, again, looking at the whole holistic, as you've pointed out, the whole holistic, how well am I? And, this word balance, I kind of go, not for me really, because life ebbs and flows, and we've always got different things. So yes, we might be really doing well at work and we might feel fit and strong in that perspective, but then something happens and we don't feel so great emotionally, and financially something might slip because we have to help somebody. And so those things are always moving. So I think when we focus on balance, it's almost looking as if to say everything's a state of equilibrium, and it's not.
That's right, and it has to just be that way, and then it feels precarious.
Absolutely. And so I work more with, let's go with what's working and identify what's not actually working. And let's have a look at how we do this, because I often see that, particularly with people who want to lose weight, they can say, that's not working. What I'm going to do is I'm going to starve myself, or I'm going to go on a liquid diet. Or it could be that you're feeling really bad and you think, I know what I'm going to do to feel good. I'm going to treat myself. And then you end up scrolling on social media and buying everything, or going in the shops and then you get yourself into debt. And so instead of actually looking in and saying to ourselves, what isn't working and why isn't working, and taking responsibility, we can be outward looking and looking to have a fix in a way to solve things, and that's not going that's not going to work. And I'm not saying this is easy. Everything that whenever I'm on your show, I always talk about things and think it's not that easy. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it is easy, but we do have choices. We often don't think that we have choices, but we do have choices. And what I would say is look at the things that aren't working and start slowly. What's that one thing that isn't going well in your life at this moment in time? You don't have to really, tackle it all gung-ho, but just start peeling away the edges. Is it that you feel to yourself that, I just get angry all the time and I'm just really, I feel like if I'm really emotive all the time. Why is that? Is there something you can do to look at that?
That one thing.
Start with there.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Because I also see clients who have maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's that feeling of, I need to do more, I haven't done enough, and yet to the outside eye, they're probably the highest achievers you've ever seen. People would love to have done what they've done, but for them, it's not enough. They need to do more, and they need to be more. And how do you get that person to kind of have that honest self-reflection that actually grounds us a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be ready, and I've talked about me having an A-type personality, so I know that, I really recognise that, but I need to hone her in sometimes. And there's a quote that I love by Coco Chanel, and I actually wrote it down so I remember it, and it says, "The most courageous act is still to think of yourself aloud." And I think it is courageous because often we don't listen to ourselves. And one of the things is, I think, is simply silence as a whole, but also silencing the voices. And so, as I said, we have got choices if we're going to scroll and we're going to look at what everybody else is saying, or we're going to listen to people's opinions of ourselves. Yeah. But I think what we can do is start to silence those voices and start to silence our own. And as I said, it's not that easy, but just to listen to ourselves. And I think we need help in this. So, listening to positive podcasts like this, or reading positive articles, or joining a group that's going to make you feel really good about yourself. People that you can share honest, opinions with, and that you enjoy being around. And again, actually thinking, where do I find those groups? I do think, and again, this might sound woo-woo, but when you put the intention out there that you want to do this, I do think that you can find it. Yes. You'll see an article or you'll see something on social media, but it starts really with you silencing out everything that's coming in that you don't want, so that you can hear what you really do need.
And recognising it, yes, I like that. I like that a lot.
Thinking about at work, but not just at work, how can we think of some healthy ways that we can stop and rest, do you think? Have you got some suggestions?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this again, Jude, I think it comes back to listening to ourselves, because, when we're on go mode and we've got to get it right, we have to. We are living in this society that tells us we have to get everything right. We don't stop, we don't listen. And I've talked about, the body keeps the score, and a lot of body work that I do, that unless you're able to be quiet, you're not able to actually not only hear your emotions, but you're not able to feel really what's going on in your body. And so you can actively go for a walk and just think, oh, do I feel loose, or is there tightness around? Or if you've got the space and the time, you can actually lie down and just feel your body, and just feel where there's tension, where there is pain, and just ask yourself, what's actually caused this? What's the root of this actually happening? And I know for me, resting is such a challenge. It's not the place I go to first of all. It's only because I do work that I need to kind of walk the talk. And so, when we're sitting quiet, I think something actually happens. We come into our own, we're able to reconnect with ourselves and to hear what we need. What we need isn't always what we want.
Very true.
But I think what we need actually comes to the fore when we're quiet. And I think in the workplace, it can be really hard, because it's one of those places that often we're meant to conform and to do what everybody else is doing. And some days you'll feel like that, and some days you won't. But I always encourage clients, people that I'm working with, to just take a break, to go for a walk, even to, when you're going for a toilet break, to go to the toilet that's not next to you, but that's further away. So you've simply got that time to go for a walk. And one of the things is, particularly if you're starting a new job, is to put this in straight away. Start having a lunch break, start going for a walk at lunch break, and speak to your manager and tell them that, the reason that you need to go for a walk at lunch is just because you're looking after your health and your well-being, and they should hopefully be supportive of you.
Yeah,
that's some really, really great suggestions. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And on the other side of that, at work, how can we be more healthy? So, is
actively.
Yeah, exactly. So what can we put in place to be more healthy?
I mean, I think, as I said, I think the workplace can be quite challenging because we're all supposed to be kind of uniform, go to lunch at the same time and do everything at the same time. But within that, I think, we can do things that we can have a lunch break at a time that feels great to us. You could have half past 11. You don't have to have 12. And you can bring in food that is gorgeous, that you think, I love this, it makes me really feel good. And when you're eating it, or, if you've got soup and you're drinking it, you can actually think to yourself silently in your head, wow, this is nourishing me, this is making me feel really, really good. And if you're able to get away from your desk, do that, go for a walk. And if you're not confident in doing that on your own, ask a colleague to go, because often people will want to be doing the same thing, but they won't be because they don't want to, stand out. But just asking people if they would go with you. And, you have to remember that the human resources departments, they have a duty of care about our well-being. It's really their responsibility to make sure that every employee is well. I think I was doing some work the other day and doing some research, and it's something like £23 billion is lost in the UK because of people being sick. So it really hits the bottom line of organisations. So the HR department does have a big responsibility, and I think often the HR department could do more to give examples of other ways of enjoying yourself at work and your time at work. They could have case studies of people who have lunch breaks at different times, or who go for a walk, just to encourage that sense of well-being. It's not simply, do this quick online training on mental health. It's actually, I think HR departments could actually do things that put things in practice.
Yes, I agree. And it's almost like there's a fear that they don't want to do it because it's like they're jealous of the other organisation who's doing it, or afraid they're going to lose productivity or something like that. And in some cases, it may not work for your organisation. That's okay. Find something else that does work for your organisation. But that doesn't mean, don't try it. So Felicia is staying with us because this is so helpful and so interesting.
Really?
We'll be back just after this.
Navigating today's workplace is tough.
Toxic employees, endless drama, a lack of motivation. We've all been there.
But fear not, we are here to help. My name is Leanne and I'm a chartered psychologist.
My name is Al and I'm a business owner, and together we dig into the scientific and commercial secrets behind great workplace cultures in Truth, Lies and Work.
A no-nonsense, award-winning psychology podcast brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. We explore practical strategies for building a great workplace.
We debunk buzzwords and bring you the very best advice around finding and keeping great people, from personality tests.
Personality tests they're mostly bollocks. I don't know what kind of language you do on your podcast. I don't know if people know this, but the man who wrote the Wonder Woman comics is the person who invented the disc.
When more flexible working became a norm, you no longer hurt your career prospects by being the one person who worked flexibly.
All the way to avoiding high turnover.
We recruit and promote people to managerial roles based on their technical skills, not their people skills. This is a very fundamental problem we have, which we haven't directly tackled.
From toxic-free cultures,
Interventions for the individual are only half the answer. Systemic change is the other half.
to sustainable growth.
Thinking beyond just paying somebody a good salary, I think is super necessary now. We have to offer so much more than that.
We have got you covered.
So join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where we help you to simplify the science of work and build amazing workplace cultures.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. We have Felicia Jones with us, and we are talking about what makes us well in general, and especially as women, because there are too many stereotypes out there. So coming back to some of those questions, hello. Some people don't understand that actually sometimes it is hormonal imbalance. And I don't just mean perimenopause or menopause, or it can be insulin. It can be other hormones that are causing us unhealthy feelings, unhealthy behaviours. So what should women begin to understand about the role of hormones, and rather than kind of just go, we fall into the trap, I'm perimenopausal. It's like, no, that cheapens that as well. How do we step back from that?
So, I like simplicity when I'm explaining things. And so, I often say, like, do you know what hormones are and what they do in the body? So what are hormones? And all they are is simply signalers. And so it could be to do with our reproduction health. It could be due to growth. It could be our mood, a whole host of things, development, our sexual growth. And, I often think about it in terms of somebody who's got one of these signs up. If you're going along, I was just thinking this morning, I was driving and somebody stopped in front of me, so this is why I was thinking of this, that you're driving along and somebody has a sign up because they're having to re-divert the traffic. So that's how I like to think of hormones. And hormones can be disrupted. So you imagine this person who's directing the traffic and they're doing it really well, everybody's going around, and then they take a call on their mobile. And so instead of having this sign up like this, it starts going like this. Yeah. So people are thinking, do I go left? Do I go right?
It's true.
And that is what happens with the disruptors. And then it can be a colleague comes over. So they're on the phone and they're talking to and then the sign's totally gone. And it's disarray. People don't know if they're going left, if they're going right, if they should go back, if they should go forward. And, this is the way that I think about hormones, and we can have so many things that disrupt our hormones. And so people might not be aware of skin products, cosmetics, the things that are kept, that are contained in those. In foods, we have E numbers, we have additives, and all of these things can disrupt our hormones, or they can get our hormones to mimic certain behaviours that aren't healthy for our body.
Yes.
And so, if you're eating poor quality foods, or if you are leaving foods that are out of date, and I'm always one of those people that does the smell and the kind of look
it's all right.
Well, but, if you're eating that kind of thing, if you're in a smoggy environment with a lot of environmental toxins, those can get caught up in your body. They can get stored in your fat cells. And then when they're released, they cause even more disruption in the body. Wow. So one thing that I would say is always look at, the products around your home. Always have a look at the cosmetics that you have, the skin products that you're putting on, because your skin is the largest barrier, but it's also extremely absorbent. So have a look at those things around the house that can get into your skin, into your cells, and literally disrupt your hormones.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea that our environment could affect our hormones in that way.
Because that's the thing about storing it and then releasing it, just almost going back to your sign analogy, which I love. I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's almost like when you are releasing the traffic after they've been held up, you're affected by the person behind you, who's affected by the person next to you, by your own mindset of where you are, and that will affect how you drive subsequently. So I think this is so important, and we're not taught this. We need to be taught this. So with that in mind, do you think it's more important to know about this and be able to proactively check our skincare, just check our houses, or do you think it's as important or more important to have the tools to deal with it when we realise it's all going wrong? I'm sure both are important, but where do we start if we don't know where?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're both important. And this is where I banish that word balance.
Yeah, that's why I've not used it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're constantly trying to get balance, I find that really stressful. Because it's never going to be balanced. But I think if we can keep asking ourselves, how well am I? Something puts you off kilter. And instead of ignoring that, instead of actually hiding it, suppressing it, we actually allow ourselves to explore that and to find out what's actually causing that, either emotion or physical or mental disturbance. Then we're in a position to actually do something about it. Again, this is hard. Once we've identified it, that can be a challenge, but actually doing the work is really hard. But once you've actually identified it, as I said, just really try not to stuff it down and to get help. It could be a friend, it could be, you know, a colleague, it could be somebody online in a Facebook group or something like that. But really get help to work through this, because the dividends in working through it are just are huge. You know, you might just think to yourself, oh, I want to deal with, I don't know, my weight issue or my unhealthy eating behaviour. You actually get help with that. It can take 6 months, it can take a year. You imagine what your life is going to be like at the other side of that.
Yeah,
that's so true. That's so true.
Absolutely. And is it possible for you to give us your 3 top tips? Can you kind of condense it into 3 top tips for being well?
Always.
Of course you
I'm a
can.
nutritionist and a stress management trainer, but my number one tip, will always be sleep. You know, with distorted sleep, with our circadian rhythms being out of balance, it affects our mental health, our emotional health, our physicality. So sleep, number 1. Then eating well, and then managing our stress, managing our emotions.
Brilliant. And I think probably we all know that, but it's good to hear it and, you know, be told. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's succinct, and I think it's never hurts to have that reminder.
No,
exactly. And what's right for us as well. We know our own bodies.
I need you telling me that every morning, Felicia, actually.
You're welcome, Jude. I need to tell myself that every day as well.
Well, that's quite reassuring to know, actually, that even you might need to have that reminder. What does a well person look like in the workplace?
I think it comes to respecting yourself. And if you can respect yourself, then you can respect others. And I think one thing that I've seen a lot in the workplace is that, you know, we're all damaged human beings in one way or another. But often people come in and they haven't dealt with their issues. They're in places often of emotional pain, and they put that on to other people. And so I think, you know, that's where we have these toxic environments, because people are smiling on the outside, but inside they're not necessarily that healthy emotionally, and they're putting that on other people. So I think if you can really look at yourself and see how you can be the healthiest that you can be, and if you can respect yourself, then I think you'll respect other people.
Brilliant. Yeah. And so the other side of that, what does a well workplace look like?
Again, I do think that it comes down to HR being very much involved, and you might just have a very, very small operation, but of it actually coming from not only the management team, but the whole team actually talking about well-being and what that means openly and honestly, not, as I said, watching a half-hour video and then ticking it off and saying, oh yeah, you know, I've done that, I know what well-being means, and then going back and doing the same thing. And I think COVID showed us that there's lots of different ways that we can work, and really speaking to employees and finding out what's best for them, because I am really, really productive, whether I'm working in the office or at home. I'm happy to work at home. Some people just hate that and they want to be in the office all the time. But really working out, you know, what is best for my workforce? Can people be more flexible? Can they start earlier and sometimes finish later? Because if you're happier in how you are, that's going to make you a more productive, employee.
Yeah.
That's going to be better for the people around you. That's going to be better for the business, really. And I think if you think about the workplace as a microcosm of the whole world, if we're more healthy in that way at work, we're going to be healthier, you know, as a society, really.
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
Love that. Oh my goodness. As always, I mean, I think in some ways you always make me think of more questions than we answer, but I think that's a really good thing, because these are discussions that do need to be had, and these discussions need to take place in the workplace, within teams, within family groups, within social groups, because everyone's different and everyone will have their own way of being well. Felicia, where can we find more about you or join any of your sessions and so on?
So I'm at Stressless Living on all social medias, and I have added a link to a Well Woman giveaway that I've created. And so, you know, if you just want to have that just to look at and just to remind yourself, then, you know, certainly do that. But I'd encourage you, talk to other people, talk to your managers, talk to people in HR if you're feeling off balance and it's affecting you in the workplace.
That's
Brilliant.
amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, as always, Felicia. It's just such a pleasure. And we'll head over to Business Boost. For today's Business Boost, I wanted to look at The Sims for, you know, many reasons, apart from the fact that I think they've just brought out The Sims 4 remastered or something like that for PC. Anyway, what The Sims is based on, and I had no idea about this, is it's actually based on Maslow's hierarchy. And the idea behind this is The Sims, unless their basic needs, such as sleep, such as going to the toilet, all of those basic needs are met, they can't actually do any of the higher order functions. And this really relates to well-being in the business, in the workplace, because simply, if your employees do not have the basic things to do their jobs, such as the tools that they need, such as a safe environment in which to work, such as appropriate pay and feeling that they are welcomed and that they belong, all of those things, feeling good about being there, how do you expect them to function? The way Maslow's hierarchy works is you have to fulfill the basic needs before you can move up to the higher level needs. And that's something we need to remember ourselves. So often in the workplace, we talk about, oh, let's add this new thing, and let's add AI, let's add whatever new technology there is. Sometimes we just need to go back to basics. Sometimes we just need to say, do people have the tools to do their job? Are people being paid appropriately? Do people feel safe in this workplace? And then when we've established that, we can move on to the next level of really achieving. What an interesting discussion again with Felicia.
So interesting, and there were so many things that I never knew or that I rarely thought about.
And the point about the hormones.
I know, that was eye-opening.
Yes, and it's scary how not only does it hit you the one way, but when you release it, it hits you again. It's like, great.
Exactly. I loved her analogy, actually, about the cars stopping and then not knowing which way to go. And then you can imagine, can't you, when they can go, that there's like a massive rush. Yeah. And that's exactly what goes on.
And I think that's the thing with our hormones that we don't realise as well, is that the hormones don't always function perfectly. In the same way as we get distracted, hormones can sort of do their own thing as well. And it's true, because we don't know what it is that caused the distraction.
Well, exactly. And if it's something like, you know, moisturiser or sun cream or whatever, or fake tan or whatever it might be that goes... Because we forget the skin is an organ.
Yes.
So, of course, that's going to somehow affect.
And then, something I've noticed as well is as you get older, your skin and everything, it changes, which means that your routine that you've been using for 20 years suddenly doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And we have to recognise those things.
Yeah.
So there's so much more that goes into being well than we ever think about. What are you taking away from today?
Some really basic pieces of advice, actually, which I am really bad at following. So get enough sleep, eat properly, and go for a walk. You know, because Felicia said, some people find it very difficult to stop, and I'm one of those people. And I know that you're extremely busy, but you're amazing at giving yourself time in between all your busy things.
I think that only happens when I can actually plan for it. So, for example, I was doing an event last week, which means that my whole weekend's run into this week.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just happens like that. So it's not always easy to say, oh, I can't do something.
No.
Because you've got all of that on. But yeah, I think you have to be quite strict. And then relating to that, the thing that I'm taking away is we all need to take that responsibility. And I had this conversation with someone else during the week. Sometimes where I struggle is when I put that boundary in and then someone takes it personally. And you're just like, well, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
So I think we all have to be aware.
Yes, of course. I mean, the most important thing for you is how you look after yourself.
Yes.
So if you're putting a boundary in and then that's being taken the wrong way by someone else, that's something extra that you shouldn't need to deal with.
Because that's what makes you then think, oh, then I can't do that with that person.
Yeah.
But then you've got to then question, well, actually, how is my relationship with that person serving me?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult,
true.
very
It's complicated.
complex. So it's all of these are very simple tips in so many ways, but actually there's more complexity that goes beneath it. Well, oh my goodness. On that note, have a healthy week.